Shalom. First and foremost, want to give all praises, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Ba'ashem, Yahweh Shai, Ba'ashem, Kakradash. Double honors to the apostles and elders of GMS that rule well. Peace, love, and salutation to all the brothers out there pushing this word of sincerity and the truth. Shalom to the brothers, sisters, and children out there keeping this word of sincerity and the truth. All right, and today I'm gonna do a quick lesson on, as you probably heard, they moved the doomsday clock. It's closer to midnight, which I don't even know what they mean by scientists. What scientists are studying? You know, what are they studying? You know, which I know they're looking into stuff. They probably trying to look into the, astrology. You know how Esau get down. He gonna look into each and every way, trying to find out what's going on, what's about to happen. But it says it moves closer as it's 85 seconds to midnight, closest point to catastrophe since its debut. And you know that it's spiritual behind this, for this man to have a doomsday clock for his own kingdom's demise, So I'm gonna just jump straight into the scriptures. And this is Daniel chapter 5. I'm gonna start at 1 and I'm gonna read it down and read it all in the AMP, because as we know, just like all these other kingdoms that came on the face of the earth had their time where they was to rule and then time where they was to be destroyed, Esau Edom's kingdom is the same way. And we about to read what happened to the Babylonian kingdom and what the Lord said unto it, because the same thing has happened to America, which is, well, Esau's kingdom in general, Babylon the Great. Now, this verse 1, Belshazzar, the king, who was a descendant of Nebuchadnezzar, gave a great feast for 1,000 of his nobles. See, look, there it is. That's the spirit right there. Doomsday Clock 2026 announcement. The end is near. That's the spirit. And he was drinking his wine in the presence of the 1,000 guests. Belshazzar, as he tasted the wine, gave a command to bring in the gold and silver vessels which his father Nebuchadnezzar had taken out of the temple, which was in Jerusalem, so that the king and his nobles, his wives, and his concubines might drink from them. And that's a proud thing to do. You take something that belonged to Yahweh Shai that he gave to his people, the Israelites, and you take it for yourself and think to drink out of it. Something that the Lord is going to comment on later. It says, then they brought in the gold and silver vessels that had been taken out of the temple, the house of the Most High, which was in Jerusalem, and the king and his nobles, his wives, and his concubines drank from them. They drank the wine and praised the gods of gold and silver and bronze, iron, wood, and stone. And that's where he really went off. Really messed up. Praising other gods, which this ain't no Israelite anyway, but that's very disrespectful. Go and take the Israelites like you go and take our wealth and praise other gods with things that Yahweh Shai gave us. So it says, verse 5, suddenly the fingers of a man's hand appeared and began writing opposite the lampstand on a well-lit area of the plaster of the wall of the king's palace. And the king saw the part of the hand that did the writing. Then the king's face grew pale and his thoughts alarmed him. His joints and his muscles of his hips and back weakened and his knees began knocking together. Right, so it scared the hell out of him. It's just like you at the house. You at the house home alone, you know what I'm saying? You in a good mood, you probably chilling, whatever, drinking, whatever it is you do, you just chilling, and then out of nowhere, you just see a hand pop up on the wall, or you just see like just using what the scriptures say, a hand pop up on the wall, a person's hand just appear and floating in midair, just a hand. It'd be different things that'll scare people. Somebody, you ain't got to be home alone, but, just imagine you home alone and you hear a sound. You hear a noise or something, and it is unusual. It ain't nothing like, you can kind of figure out what it is. It's something you ain't never heard before. It's gonna make you, it's gonna put chills in you. But the Lord, the Lord made an actual man's hand appear on the wall and start writing in front of the king. You know, he can do stuff like that. That's funny. You know, the reaction of the heathen was funny. The king called a lot. He called aloud. He started yelling for his people to come in, to bring in the enchanters, the magi, the Chaldeans, who were masters at astrologers, and the diviners. The king said to the wise men of Babylon, whoever can read this writing and explain its interpretation to me shall be clothed with purple and have a chain of gold put around his neck and have authority as the third ruler in the kingdom. So he said, look, if you can tell me what this say and what it means accurately, you're going to be the next king. Then all the king's wise men came in, but they could not read the writing or reveal to the king its interpretation. Right, which we just going to keep going. I'm not going to really get too many footnotes. Then King Belshazzar was greatly perplexed, and his face became even paler, and his nobles were bewildered and alarmed. Right, because they see out of nowhere it's just some writing on the wall that wasn't there before, and the king, he's scared out of his mind. Something just happened and he can't explain it, and his guys ain't answering the question. You know, it said now the queen mother, overhearing the excited words of the king and his nobles, came into the banquet area. The queen, it's a queen mother, spake and said, O king, live forever. Do not be alarmed at your thoughts or let your face be changed. There is a man in your kingdom in whom is a spirit of the holy gods. And in the days of your father, illumination, understanding, and wisdom like the wisdom of the gods were found in him. King Nebuchadnezzar, your father, the king, appointed him chief of the magicians, enchanters, Chaldeans, and diviners. It was because an extraordinary spirit, or excellent spirit in KJV, knowledge and insight, the ability to interpret dreams, clarify riddles, and solve complex problems were found in this man Daniel, whom the king named Belshazzar. Now let Daniel be called, and he will give the interpretation. And Daniel was brought in before the king, and the king said to him, Daniel, so like it said to Daniel, are you that Daniel, who was one of the sons of the exiles of Judah, or captivity of Judah, whom my father the king brought from Judah? It says, I have heard of you, that a spirit of the gods is in you, and that illumination, which illumination, we know what, illumination mean being, like you had a light, light comes from you. Light, knowledge, wisdom, understanding. That's why I say illumination, insight, and extraordinary wisdom have been found in you. Now the wise men and the enchanters were brought in before me so that they might read this writing and reveal its meaning to me, but they could not give the interpretation of the message. But I personally have heard about you, that you are able to make interpretations and solve complex problems. Now, if you are able to read the writing and reveal its interpretation to me, you shall be clothed with purple and have a chain of gold put around your neck, and you shall have authority as the third ruler in the kingdom. Then Daniel answered and said, before the king, keep your gifts for yourself and give your rewards to someone else. However, I will read the writing to the king and reveal the interpretation to him. Now, this is where it starts to get into what the Lord's judgment is for, at that time, Babylon the Great, but it can also be applied to this time. O King, Most High God, the Most High God gave Nebuchadnezzar your father a kingdom and greatness and glory and majesty. And because of the greatness that he gave him, all the peoples, nations, speakers of every land trembled and feared him. Whomever he wished, he killed. Whomever he wished, he kept alive. Whomever he wished, he promoted. And whomever he wished, he humbled. That's the same power that Esau had in the earth today. He can go through and cause devastation in these other nations' lands, and they ain't want no smoke with him, for a good little minute. They didn't want no smoke with Babylon the Great, America. But now things have changed. It says, but when his heart was lifted up and his spirit became so proud that he behaved arrogantly, he was disposed from his royal throne and his glory was taken away from him. We're just going into Nebuchadnezzar now. His when the Lord took his understanding, his human mind away from him. It said he was driven from mankind, and his mind was made like that of an animal, and his dwelling place was with the wild donkeys, and was given grass to eat like cattle, and his body was wet with the dew of heaven, until he came to know without any doubt that the Most High, Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahushua, rules over the kingdom of mankind, and he appoints it to whomever he wills. So the Lord brought a major humbling to his father, Belshazzar's father, which was Nebuchadnezzar. Like I said, he took him from being the king and made him, took his mind and put him out there with animals. He was, and I think it was like that for 7 years, if I'm not mistaken. He was out there with the animals, eating grass like the animals, living with the animals, until the Lord was like, all right, give him back his mind. And as soon as he got his mind back, he praised Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahushua, because he knew that was the one true God, And I'm over here laughing because when you think about it, these heathens, they done tried to contend with the Most High and been proud and been arrogant. Each heathen, each nation done tried. And the Lord always found a way to humble them, in a unique way. He uniquely humbled them, and it just makes me laugh when you think about it. But Esau, the Lord, this finna be the worst punishment any nation ever got. The Lord is, he finna do Esau on a whole nother level. But like I said, he gives the kingdom to whoever he will. So just like with this doomsday clock, they are anticipating their own downfall and destruction. And guess what? After Esau is Israel. The nation of Israel will rule the earth. Let me get that real quick. It's 2nd Esdras 6, 8 and 9. Well, 7, 8 and 9. Then I answered and said, what shall be the parting asunder of the times, or when shall the end of the first and the beginning of it that followeth? And he said, you know what? Let me get in the GNT. All right, GNT verse 7. Then I asked, how long a period of time will divide the ages, and when will the first age end and the next age begin? Which that's why I wanted to get it, because it was saying age, and not the end of the world like most people would think. When they say the end of the world, they think Earth as we know it is going to cease to exist, or it's going to be destroyed and uninhabited. But no, it's just the end of this time period where these heathens rule over the earth, with the last heathen being Esau Edom. Verse 8, he answered, the interval would be no longer than that between Abraham and Abraham. He was the grandfather of both Jacob and Esau. And when they were born, Jacob was holding Esau's heel. Esau represents the end of this age, and Jacob represents the beginning of the new age. So right after Esau is taken out of power, Jacob is going to rule over the earth immediately afterwards. Immediately afterwards. And in the KJV, verse 8, it said, and he said unto me, from Abraham unto Isaac, when Jacob and Esau were born of him, Jacob's hand held first the heel of Esau. For Esau is the end of the world, and Jacob is the beginning of it that followeth. See? So it's immediately after Esau is taken out of power. So the Lord is appointing the nation of Israel to be the next rulers under the earth, headed by Yahushua, and we're going to rule forever. Now, verse 22, it said back in Daniel 5:22 AMP, and you, his son, O Belshazzar, have not humbled your heart, your mind, even though you knew all this, and you have exalted yourself against the Lord of heaven and the vessels of his house have been brought before you, and your nobles, your wives and your concubines have been drinking wine from them, and you have praised the gods of silver and of gold, of bronze, iron, wood, and stone, which do not see or hear or understand, but the God who holds his hand, your breath, who holds in his hand your breath of life, and your ways you have not honored and glorified, but have dishonored and defiled. See, it was that was a big mistake for you to take what belonged unto us, given to us by Yahweh by Shema Shah, and worship false gods and praise false gods for what you have, when the Lord gave all this to you because we was being disobedient. That was very proud and arrogant. And the Lord, he finna tell him his judgment, and what's gonna happen. So, and just to think about that point alone, if the Lord did this to, the Babylonians for everything, just for being wicked, they are the heathens and they are wicked, but they did that. And he, the Lord specifically spoke about this account with him praising the gods, taking our stuff, drinking out of it like it belongs unto him, and praising false gods. Just imagine what the Lord is finna do to Esau, which we don't even know the full magnitude of what the Lord is finna do to Esau for actually handling us the way he did. Everything that Esau done, it's finna be a severe. You look, the word that signifies the severity of what the Lord is finna do to these Edomites, all these nations, but especially Esau. That word doesn't even exist. You can't even say a word strong enough to apply to what the Lord is finna do to these Edomites. Now, verse 24, then the hand was sent from the presence of the Most High, and this inscription was written. This is the inscription that was written: Mene, Mene, Tekel, Upharsin, numbered, weighed, and divided. This is the interpretation of the message, Mene, which I might be pronouncing it wrong. It says, the Most High has numbered the days of your kingdom and put an end to it. Meaning your kingdom is about to end. Your reign, your people reigning on the earth and being the dominant nation is from the end. The same judgment that's going to happen to Esau, Edom. To Kel, you have been weighed on the scales of righteousness and found deficient. That's especially Babylon the Great. It said this is the mother of harlots, and every foul and hateful bird, unclean, hateful bird is found over here. Meaning every form of wickedness is found in this place. So it said it's been weighed on the scales or the balances of righteousness and found deficient, lacking. It's extremely wicked over here. So the Lord is going to put an end to this wicked place. And then it says, Peres, your kingdom has been divided and given over to the Medes and Persians, which, of course, we know the Medes and the Persians, they came right after this and destroyed, and killed him and took over the kingdom, immediately right after. But what's going to happen to Esau, just like we read in 2nd Ezra 6, right after this man is taken out of power, it's the nation of Israel's turn to rule the earth, and we're going to rule it forever. And that's what salvation is all about. Yahweh Ba'Shem Shah liberating the elect first, but ultimately liberating the nation of Israel out of captivity and back into rulership where we belong. I guess I'll read the last two. The last three. It says, then Belshazzar gave the command, and Daniel was clothed with purple, and a chain of gold was put around his neck, and a proclamation concerning him was issued, declaring that he now had authority as the third ruler in the kingdom, which that's spiritual within itself, because right after Babylon got destroyed, or right before it got destroyed, it was already acknowledged that an Israelite or Israel was going to be the next ruler, which we know that didn't happen like that. It's all symbolic, spiritual, looking at it from a spiritual eyesight, just like America's finna be destroyed, Babylon the Great, and Israel is finna rule right afterwards. Verse 30, during that same night, Belshazzar the last Chaldean king was slain by troops of the invading army. So Darius the Mede received the kingdom. He was about the age of 62. So that's right after, like that same night he died, King Belshazzar and his army and the Medes and the Persians took over right afterwards. You know, so I didn't even think I was gonna read the whole chapter, but you know, it was good. So just like with that doomsday clock, they already know that their end is near. And like I said, for them to have a whole doomsday clock, that lets you know. It says the dooms. I'll read this and then I'll probably close it out. Okay, I don't know what this is. I ain't gonna even read it from right there. I'll just read it from right here. It says the doomsday clock is a design that warns the public about how close we are to destroying our world with dangerous technologies of our own making. It says the doomsday clock is a symbol that represents the estimated likelihood of a human-made global catastrophe. Right, World War III. You know, the third world's war. Whoa, as the scripture call it. So, and look at this. I didn't even see that right there. What was the closest time to World War III? It's talking about 1962. No, it wasn't 1962. It was January the 27th, 2026. So, you know, anyways, Lord willing, that was the edifying lesson. On that note, want to give all praises, honor, and glory to Yahweh, by Hashem Yahweh Shai, by Hashem Dash. Double honors to the apostles and elders of GMS that rule well. Peace, love, and salutations to all the brothers out there pushing this word of sincerity and the truth. Shalom to the brothers, sisters, and the children out there keeping this word of sincerity and the truth. And until next time, shalom.